مِثْلَ ذَلِكَ. Then he becomes that becomes a piece of flesh for another similar period of time, which is basically another 40 days. ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَكُ. Okay, so this is the first part of the hadith. So with this hadith, you can kind of break it down into three sections. The first section is this. Rasulullah ﷺ says that he describes the three stages of the embryo or the stages of life, right, in the womb of the mother. The first three, you could say the first trimester, but the first creation of that baby, right? So the first step is that it's a droplet, then it becomes a clot of blood, then from there it becomes a flesh, right? And after that, 120 days pass, right? ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَكُ. Then an angel is sent to that fetus. فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الرُّوحِ. That angel blows a soul into that fetus. وَيُؤْمَرُ بِأَرْبَعِ كَلِمَاتٍ. And it's commanded with 4 statements. Or it's that fetus is now given 4 directives, you can say. 4 directives or 4 things are written for this fetus. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ وَأَجَلِهِ وَعَمَلِهِ وَشَقِيٌّ أَوْ سَعِيدٌ. 4 things. The first is with the writing of his rizq, his or her rizq. How much money, wealth, how much of this will be destined for this person. The second is their life. The third is their actions. And the fourth is whether they will be a fortunate person or unfortunate person. So these 4 things are decided for a person. So this is the second part of the hadith, you can say. The third part of the hadith, he says, فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ. He says, I swear by Allah Ta'ala, with who there's no other God or no other ilah worthy of worship. إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ لَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ حَتَّى مَا يَكُونُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهَا إِلَّا ذِرَاعٌ. One of you or each of you, or it's possible, one of you does the actions of the people of Jannah until there remains nothing except one handspan. Meaning you're just about to enter Jannah. 1 arm's length left of Jannah. فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ. And then what's predestined for him happens. فَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ فَيَدْخُلُهَا. And then he does something so bad, so horrendous, that he does something so bad that he becomes of the people of Jahannam and he enters into Jahannam. وَإِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ لَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ حَتَّى مَا يَكُونُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهَا إِلَّا ذِرَاعٌ. And on the other hand, there is some of you that will spend their entire lives performing the actions of the people of Jahannam until there's only an arm's length left until he enters into Jahannam. فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ. And then what's preordained happens. فَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ فَيَدْخُلُهَا. And then he does one of the actions of the people of Jannah and then he enters into Jannah. Right? So this hadith is broken down, you can say, into 3 sections. Right? So inshallah, anytime, as I always have, you can always stop me and you can question me. If you didn't understand something, you can just stop me and just raise your hand and let me know. Inshallah, we can take any questions at any time. Chai is really good, by the way. Where is he? MashaAllah. That's always really good, MashaAllah. I don't know if sisters can have chai also? I don't know if there's enough extra for them as well. If there is, I'm sure they would love some as well. Well, we're just going to say next time, bring your own chai.
I have a question.
Bring your own chai. BYOC. Go ahead.
The question is, if you succeed or if you everything is predetermined, pre-written.
What's the point of action?
Okay. Can it be changed?
Yes. So yes, I'll explain all of that. So right now, just questions about what I mentioned, and then obviously I'm going to do the explanation of the hadith, and then also what we should do. I'll talk about that, inshallah. But it's a good question. Shows, mashallah, people are paying attention. So that's the first part. Let's go over these three aspects, right? The first is we're going to talk about the creation of a person. As I mentioned, as the hadith mentions, there are three stages, right, of this embryo or this fetus, you can say, the fetus, right? There are three stages of the fetus, right? The first is the droplet, then the clot, and then you have the flesh. Allah Ta'ala Himself also mentions in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ. Allah Ta'ala, He says that we have created humankind from a product of soil. Right? So it's mentioned that we as humans, we were created from soil. Allah Ta'ala gathered soil from different parts of the earth, and Allah Ta'ala Himself molded Adam alayhi salam. And so technically that's where we come from, right? We come from dirt. And that's why when we go to bury a person, what do we say? مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى. Such an emotional statement. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, right? That from this dirt, خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, we created you. وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ, and in this dirt we shall return you. وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى, and from this dirt we will revive you once again. Remember this very well, that we are from dirt. So we should never be too arrogant, thinking that we're better than anybody else, because at the end of the day, we are creations of dirt. So the more we humble ourselves, the more Allah Ta'ala will raise us. In the hadith, Rasulullah says, مَنْ تَوَاضَعَ لِلَّهِ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهِ. The one who humbles themselves for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala will elevate them. Very important. So anyways, so for Adam alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala created him like this. Allah Ta'ala Himself molded Adam alayhi salam. Can you imagine? And then from the ribs of Adam alayhi salam, Hawa alayhi salam, she was created. And then through their union, all of us, we were created. Right? So that's the initial creation of mankind, humankind. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. Then we placed, or we made it. So the first creation was a product of dirt, which is Adam alayhi salam, right? Then Allah Ta'ala says, then we have placed him in a droplet, in a safe lodging, meaning in the womb of the mother, a safe space, safe place for the fetus. ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقًا. Then we created the droplet to be a clot of blood. فَخَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَةَ مُضْغَةً. And then we made the clot of blood turn into a lump of flesh. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَةَ عِظَامًا. And then we made the lump of flesh, we added bones to it. فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. Then we added meat to the bones. ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. And then we created it into a new being. Again, the stages of human life. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. And so how amazing, how glorified be Allah Ta'ala. How blessed is Allah Ta'ala, the greatest being, the greatest of creators. This is 1400 years ago. Allah Ta'ala sent this down. 1400 years ago, Allah Ta'ala spoke about the creation of humankind, the creation of the fetus. Again, this is amazing, right? Doctors for centuries, they would not know this. And they would refer to the Quran. They had no knowledge of any of this. Allah Ta'ala revealed this in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ spoke about this. The Prophet ﷺ was an unlettered person. He did not know how to read or write, yet he's talking about science, right? Which is hundreds of years later. Hundreds of years later, not just decades, hundreds of years later, he's talking about science from that era. Now, for us to understand it, it's like, oh yeah, we know this very well. But imagine 1400 years ago when you didn't have anything. And Allah Ta'ala is talking about the creation of humankind. Amazing. One of the qudrat and one of the signs of Allah Ta'ala. There's so much to talk about, right? There's one website, if I'm not mistaken, it's called, I think, Miracles of the Quran or something, right? I highly recommend, go over it. It's such an amazing website. Just go through it. They talk about different aspects, different miracles, and how they're a miracle. How is the bee a miracle? He brings it in that website, or whoever it is, I don't know, he or she, whatever. Someone, there's only two genders now, right? So whoever it is, they uploaded a beautiful, go to that website, Miracles of the Quran. You'll find so many good, amazing concepts, right? So many things Allah Ta'ala spoke about. So many things we can learn from the Quran. Anyways, moving on. So Allah Ta'ala, He first speaks about the creation of humankind. And I won't spend too much time on it because, oh my God, subhanAllah, I'm planning to end by 8 o'clock, inshallah. So I have about 20 minutes, inshallah. That's my goal, inshallah. Then we'll have food. Right? So now, on this topic, right? On this topic of creation of humankind, there comes the topic of abortion. Right? This is obviously, I try to generally, in my conversations and our discussions, I try to include relevant discussions. Abortion is a topic which, especially nowadays, right? Many people are talking about it, and it's important that we understand what abortion is from an Islamic perspective, and what is meant by abortion, and what is permissible and what is impermissible. Understand that whenever you take the laws of humankind, right? It's very different, right? Human laws are man-made. They're man-made, and so therefore definitely there will be flaws. Just as humans have flaws, human laws or man-made laws also have flaws. And so therefore, if any mankind is trying to promote or create laws against the laws of Allah Ta'ala, then it will not make sense. So we speak about the laws of abortion in the Quran or based on Sharia. What does Sharia say about abortion? Give me 5 minutes, let me enjoy the chai and then. Good chai is hard to make, by the way. I mean, not everybody can make good chai, right? Anyways, so he says that regarding abortion, right? Let's talk about abortion. So abortion, and Islam is such a balanced religion. You'll see how balanced Islam is. Islam doesn't just say abortion is completely impermissible. At the same time, Islam does not say that abortion is completely fine. Islam has a very balanced approach to everything. And Islam is the only religion, the more you learn about it, the more you fall in love with it. Because of how balanced Islam is, right? As we make the dua to Allah Ta'ala every single day, Ihdina Siraat al-Mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Some people, they say that this is the moderate path, not the path of ifrat or tafrit, meaning not the path of extremism, you can say, in either direction, either too relaxed like the Christians or too strict like the Jews. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Allah Ta'ala explained. That's a different topic, right? So now abortion. So based on this hadith and based on other similar hadith, the scholars, they say that the soul is presented and the soul is inserted into the womb after 120 days. So after 120 days, that fetus is now an actual human being. Okay? So let's talk about what's haram. What's definitely haram? What's haram is after 120 days to do any type of abortion. Right? Any type of abortion after 120 days is completely haram, except for one scenario. And that scenario is when it's proven, right? It's proven undoubtedly that this child or this baby will cause harm to the mother. That's the only case where abortion would be permitted after 120 days. So there are no other reasons after 120 days where abortion would be valid. It has to be certain that the mother's life is in danger. One second. Okay. So if it's certain that the mother's life will be in danger, then abortion is valid after 120 days. Now, prior to 120 days, there are some valid reasons as to why a person can perform an abortion, right, in Islam. Right? So in Islam, Sharia says that if a person, there are a number of reasons, right? A number of reasons why abortion would be permitted prior to 120 days. So as we mentioned, from this hadith and other hadith, you have the soul is presented to the body or to the child at 120 days. Prior to that, the soul is not there, so it's not really a human being. In the sense that abortion is permitted under some circumstances. So number one is in the case of rape or incest or something like that. So if a woman is abused in any way, right, then she has the choice to abort that child or abort that fetus. Right? Again, amazing how balanced Islam is, right? So if someone is raped, abused, then definitely that's one valid reason for an abortion. Another reason is, for example, if it's proven that there's a high risk of the woman's mental health being affected, and there's no, and it's 100. I mean, it's proven. Number one, it's proven, and it's not repairable, meaning her mental health will be severely affected, and that'll drastically. I mean, there will be permanent mental damage to her because of this baby. So again, proven mental stress, right, which is irreparable, meaning you cannot fix it and you cannot correct it. So if it's proven, then also it may be permitted there as well. Again, this is not just proven just by me or you. This is proven by a Muslim doctor, expert in that field. Not just any doctor. Why? Because non-Muslims will not understand what a Muslim, or non-Muslims will not have the realization and the importance and significance of life as we do, right? So therefore, it's necessary that a Muslim expert doctor issues this verdict or says that this is what's happening. And again, this is more so case by case. I'm just giving you an overview of it, and definitely you can't just take this and say, you know what, anytime I have some mental stress or something, I'm going to abort the baby. No, obviously this is case by case. Yeah, your question?
So, as we know, the technology is so up to date, and nowadays you can find, for example, congenital abnormalities.
Yes.
That a baby could have when he or she is born will have problems or issues.
Yes.
On that case, sometimes the abortion is suggested.
Yes.
Would it be judged under mental stress for the mom, and do you think it's the right way to?
No, that's my third point. So that was my third reason. The third reason why abortion would be permitted before 120 days is a proven abnormality. If there's a proven abnormality, whether it's some sort of, for example, Down syndrome or some other type of deficiency or some sort of defect in the child, before 120 days, abortion is permitted. Okay? Again, it must be proven by an expert Muslim doctor, right? And so that's necessary, right? And if an expert Muslim doctor is not found, then you can speak to me and I'll discuss further steps, right? But essentially, it must be done by an expert in the field, not just anybody, but rather an expert in the field, right? So one second. So basically, these. Let me just kind of wrap this up. Then I'll open up for questions, right? And sisters also can ask questions. Sister Tahseen or Sister Nazia, one of you who are there, you can just text me the questions that the sisters have. Just text me, inshallah. Also, by the way, yes, the water is turned off. There's unfortunately, one of the pipes broke just after around Isha time. So just make dua, everything goes well, inshallah. But there is no water in the bathrooms. So if you do need water, there are some water bottles and so on. But if you need to use the bathroom, either the water bottles or go home if you need to go back. Sorry, it's just emergency happened. These obviously weather conditions. Anyways, so going back, right? So let me just talk about this. Let me wrap it up quickly, and then you guys can ask questions. So again, before 120 days, essentially, an overview is about 3 reasons, right? One is a abuse. You can say abuse to the woman, right? So if a woman is abused, then abortion would be permitted. Number 2 is it's proven medically that the woman's mental health is severely affected, and it will cause irreparable harm. It'll cause permanent damage to her, right? That's number 2. And number 3 is that if there's proven abnormality in the child, right? In that case, also it's permitted to do an abortion before 120 days. After 120 days, doesn't matter what abnormalities, doesn't matter what happens, you cannot do an abortion after 120 days. Because after 120 days, the soul is breathed into the child. And that means that, according to our books of fiqh, it's similar to murder. If you kill a child after 120 days, it's similar to murder, right? It doesn't matter even if the child has Down syndrome, doesn't matter what problems or whatever the child has at that point, that child inshallah will be a gift, and that child will inshallah be a means of you entering Jannah inshallah. But you cannot abort the child after 120 days. Yes, as I mentioned, after 120 days, if the mother's life, if it's proven that the mother's life is in severe risk, and there's a risk of the mother's life, being lost, in that case, based on the principle of fiqh, which says that you preserve the life that's already here, as opposed to the projected life or the possibility of that life coming into existence, we preserve the mother's life over the child's life. Okay? So, as the last point, abortion is not permitted, even whether before 120 days or after 120 days. Abortion is not permitted because of financial reasons, because of child spacing. Sometimes parents, they want to space the children, so they say, I don't want to have a child now, I want to wait another 2-3 years, I want to have some gap. You cannot do that. You cannot do abortion for child spacing. You cannot also do it for premarital relations. Let's say someone had premarital relations with another woman and the woman got pregnant. You cannot do an abortion for that either, right? So it's haram, completely haram to abort a child. Yes, okay, I don't want to give you ideas, but what I'm saying is that it's not the same degree as murder after 120 days, but it is haram. Does that make sense? So aborting a child before 120 days, it's still haram, but it's not the same as murder, which is after 120 days. Okay? And so due to spacing of the children, financial reasons, sometimes the couple are young, for example. All of those reasons are not valid reasons to perform an abortion prior to 120 days or at any time. Okay? Make sense? Any questions? Bismillah. Now, Bismillah.
Yes. You said that a medical doctor who is a Muslim will have to
Yes.
determine
Yes.
the mother's health condition.
Yes.
Or if the child has abnormality.
Yes.
Those abnormalities are scientific, not opinion. So why don't we accept non-Muslim doctors?
Simply because, well, the scientific parts of it, we can accept, that's why I said if there is not really a Muslim doctor, expert, then we can consider alternatives. But those things which are scientific, yes, we would consider an expert on the field, right? And those things which are religious, because again, non-Muslims, they may suggest abortion for any reason, even if it's curable, even if it's, for example, obviously many women, they have, depression after the baby is born, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, only a Muslim doctor would understand the severity and the seriousness of the situation. Okay, so that's why we recommend a Muslim expert doctor. If a Muslim expert is not available, then we can search for alternatives. But ideally, alhamdulillah, nowadays we do have, generally, alhamdulillah, we have across the board. Yes.
After 120 days, if a doctor figured out that the fetus has a severe autism, like or Down syndrome, is it permissible to have that fetus aborted?
So as I said, no, after 120 days, no. After 120 days, you cannot abort the child due to mental illness or some sort of deficiency or some defect or something like that. You cannot. It's in the taqdeer of Allah Ta'ala. Who knows? Allah Ta'ala knows. And inshallah, if you take care of that child, inshallah, that child will be Jannati, inshallah, and you also will go to Jannah because of taking care of that child.
In case the fetus die after 120 days,
That's fine. If the child dies on its own, that's different.
do you have to do janaza for that?
Sorry?
Do you have to do janaza for that?
So it's recommended that you should bury the child. If it's after 120 days, yes, you should do a janaza. You should name the child, and in all cases, you should name the child and give a proper janaza. Just wrap the fetus in a cloth and then bury it. There's a question on the sister side. When is giving a child up for adoption permissible? In reality, never. Right? In reality, it's never permissible to give a child up for adoption. The reason being is because, yes, circumstances vary from person to person, right? Of course, a person's, again, I'm speaking in general circumstances. Let's say a woman had a child at 16, for example, she had, you know, she had relations with the opposite gender, you know, and she's young, she's 15, 16 years old, she had a baby, and now, let's say the family's embarrassed, something, whatever, and now they want to give up the child for adoption, right? That's haram. Strict haram, right? I mean, you cannot do that, right? We're talking about normal cases, right? All of these reasons, it would not be permissible to give up the child for adoption, right? Yes, if there are some extreme circumstances, let's say the entire family is killed, for example, something happens, XYZ, there's nobody to take care of the family, then that's a different extreme circumstances, right? But generally, in general circumstances, it is not permitted to give the child up for adoption. It's the father's primary responsibility to take care of the child, primary. Also the mother's responsibility, but mainly the father's responsibility to provide shelter, food, and clothing, basic clothing to the child. So therefore, it's not permissible to give up the children for adoption. On the other hand, adopting children is something which is highly encouraged. Right? Some people, they misunderstand. You know, some people, they think adopting child means what? That you're taking the child and calling the child your own son or daughter or whatever else it is. That's different, right? If you're adopting a child, you're essentially taking care of probably an orphan, right? Probably the child is probably an orphan, and that's why you're adopting the child. The child doesn't have anybody to take care of them, and that's why you're adopting, right? And there are so many ahadith which discuss the encouragement of taking care of orphans, right? And yes, this opens the conversation for a couple of other things, right? I want to touch on this because this is happening even till today. This is happening, right? Number one is if you do adopt a child, you have to understand that the laws of hijab still apply. Although it's unfortunate, meaning not, I don't want to say unfortunate, meaning although it's a reality, right? It's a reality that you must contend with, which is that that child is not a mahram for you unless the woman, she breastfeeds the child, and then obviously there's a rida'i connection, right? Otherwise, that child will always remain a non-mahram, meaning, so therefore, for example, let's say it's a girl, right? The mother, the woman, she can obviously take care of her and raise her, and she can always, be there. But the husband, her husband, obviously remains, she remains a non-mahram for her, right? So although he raised her, although he took care of her, still, as she turns baligha, once she becomes mature, then he must treat her as a normal stranger, which obviously it's difficult, but that's the reality, right? As for the boy, the opposite, right? The boy, again, if the woman breastfeeds him, then that's fine. If she does not, then as he becomes baligh, then it's no longer permitted for him and her to interact. Okay? So yes, there is a lot of reward for taking care of orphans, but it's also difficult. I know scholars in the US, mashallah, they went to other countries, they brought back orphans from that country, and they are raising them, mashallah, now in this country by themselves, alhamdulillah. So I know people within our countries, within our circles, alhamdulillah, who are doing this. So this is something which is highly commendable, and I love, and subhanallah, make dua. I do have a deep desire. If Allah Ta'ala gives me the ability and Allah gives me, the tawfiq, one day I would love to do this as well, inshallah.
Is it permissible to give your last name if you are raising them?
Yeah. So last names in Islam, last names are just meant for recognition, right? So some people, they have this misunderstanding. They think that last name means nasab. Last name means that you are tying the lineage to that person. Whereas in reality, that's not the case, right? Last name is not tying lineage, right? So for example, in America, generally, for example, the wife adopts the last name of the husband because what? Just to recognize that this is one family, essentially, right? But it's not to say that she's now his daughter or something strange like that. Doesn't make sense, right? So the people who do say it's not permissible and so on, they misunderstand, to be honest. Many of them misunderstand. And they say that it's haram to take the husband's last name and so on. That's a different story. That's you're not taking the lineage of the husband. You're just showing that you are part of the same family. Okay. Anyways, I wanted to mention another point before I forget. Right. There's another thing that's happening. There's even in our community, there's somebody that told me about this also, where some people and maybe some of you know others who do this as well. Some people, let's say they're unable to have kids, what they do is they take one of their family members' kids and they raise them as their own. I don't know if you know this happening. Okay, yes, some of you know. I know personally people who have done this, right? And they raise that child. So, for example, one of our musallis here in this community, he told me that his parents gave up or forced or whatever, they gave up their daughter to the father's brother, to his family. So now they've been raising her for the past almost 20 years as their daughter. And that's haram. So yes, you cannot call somebody, and it's explicitly prohibited, to call somebody the child of somebody else, or to call somebody else your father or mother, whereas in reality they're not.
They can be married though, because it's the act.
So basically, understood that this is not my child, this is the child of my brother, and I'm just raising her as my own daughter because I don't have daughters or something. So that's a different story. But you cannot change lineage. But the question what we mentioned was about changing the last name. Last name is not changing lineage. Last name is just for recognition. Questions? Yeah.
So, the example you just gave, so how is that different from adoption? Like, you're saying
That's different because adoption, you still have to make it clear in adoption that this is not my child.
even to the child you have to...
Yeah, you have to explain. The child should know that this you're not their biological parents. Now, you don't tell them when they're one,
Right.
but as they grow older, as they're, mature, once they're, like, others should know. Everybody should know that this is not your biological child, and you should explain to the child. And if you tell the child from a younger age, inshallah, they will not, they'll understand, inshallah. And they'll recognize the same love and so on. So, inshallah, they will not be scarred or anything like that. Children are intelligent. We give them too less credit, to be honest. Children are very, very intelligent, right? So it's better that you explain things to them from a younger age. Listen, we're not your biological parents. We adopted you. Once they're of a mature age, maybe 7, 8 years old, something like this, then explain to them at that age.
So if they're orphan and you end up adopting them,
Yes.
and so is it required for us to
Yeah,
tell
you
them?
have to explain. You have to explain to her that, or him or her, that listen, I'm not your biological father or mother. Rather, we adopted you. You must explain it. You must be very clear. Right? And lastly, sometimes we, in some cultures you call, for example, your father-in-law, mother-in-law, abu or ammu, whatever. That's just culture, right? No one believes that, okay, that's actually my mother or my father. It is culture that out of respect, you're calling your father-in-law and your mother-in-law father, abu and ammu, right? Or abba and amma, whatever you call them. Okay. Once let me answer some of these questions. Okay. A husband and wife were intimate during fasting in Ramadan. They didn't know it broke the fast. This was many years ago, and they just found out the correct masala. What should they do? Okay, that doesn't really have to do with anything I'm talking about right now. But okay, I'll answer the question, right? It's haram, right? What they did was haram. Obviously, being intimate with your spouse in Ramadan is haram, and you are sinful. But because the couple did not know, they will not have to do kafara. Kafara is basically, had they known, right? Again, it's kind of surprising they didn't know, but okay, I'll assume they did not know genuinely, right? If someone intentionally had relations with their spouse in the month of Ramadan during fasting period, then they will have to fast 60 consecutive days to make up that one fast, right? So if you intentionally have relations or intentionally eat or drink during the fast of Ramadan, then you have to make up that one day and give kafara. So, for example, you must fast 60 days consecutively together, right? If you miss one day, day 59 comes along, you mess up, you have to start all over again from day 1. So it's not easy. Assuming that this couple is genuinely mistaken, then they should do tawbah, ask Allah for forgiveness, and make up that one day. And inshallah Allah will forgive them. Is it encouraged to change the last name or after marriage or to keep it? It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Completely up to you, right? So if you want to change it after your marriage, you can. If you don't want to change it, you don't have to. There's no shari'i recommendation on it, right? In terms of legalities, in terms of customs, you can if you want to, if it helps. But if you don't want to, you don't have to at all. There's no recommendation. 1 second. Okay. Any other questions?
Does the same rule apply for a grandparent, grandfather? Like I have seen cases that they have asked for their grandson or their granddaughter to be with them or raise them, and then they can call them their own child.
No, same concept. You cannot change lineage. So whether it's a grandchild or a nephew, cousin, whatever it is, you must disclose it. So it's necessary to be disclosed. Yes.
In Ramadan, what if you intentionally don't make the intention to fast a day and you don't have an excuse? Do you have to do the kafara or make up one day after?
Okay. Good question, but has nothing to do with the topic. But I'll answer it anyways. The answer is that if you didn't make intention, then you don't have to give kafara, right? Because you didn't make the intention, even though you don't have a valid excuse, right? So it's a good question because sometimes I know he's a good kid, mashallah, or a good guy, mashallah. But let's say, for example, a lot of college students, for example, especially when people are younger, they just don't fast, for example. They just, they don't even make the intention to fast. So now, are we going to say that they have to give kafara? No. Right? In that case, they didn't make the intention to even fast. I'm talking about in the scenario where a person made the intention to fast and then they broke their fast by having relations or eating or drinking. In that case, kafara would be necessary. Kafara is dangerous. If we have to do it, then it's difficult. By the way, okay, any other questions before we move on? We have a lot. I only covered 1/3 of the hadith. We're over time, by the way.
One question like anybody was asking at the beginning, the fate.
That's at the end. I'm only talking about abortion right now. I've only covered 1/3 of the hadith. Any other question regarding abortion, let me know. Or abortion or children or naming children and these kind of things. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, I'm gonna kind of quickly rush through a bit. Not too much. I won't skip, inshallah, the important parts. Let's talk about the second part of the hadith, which is that, which is a person's taqdeer. Let's talk about it. Right? So now, to answer Anipa's question, for example, and everybody's question, everybody probably has the same question, which is not a new question, right? As we'll see in the hadith. عن علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال ما من نفس منفوسة إلا وقد كتب الله مكانها من الجنة أو النار وإلا قد كتبت شقية أو سعيدة. Right? Ali رضي الله عنه also mentions that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that there's no nafs, there's no soul except that Allah Ta'ala has written their place in Jannah or in Jahannam. Otherwise, they have been ordained as someone who is fortunate or unfortunate. So now, فقال رجل, someone asks, Ya Rasulullah, أفلا نمكث على كتابنا وندع العمل? Shall we not just rely on our books or the predestination and we just abandon doing anything? Right? Should we just, basically the same question, right? That should we just not do anything? Right? So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, فقال اعملوا فكل ميسر لما خلق له. He says that you must do things, you must act, and everyone is, or for everyone, whatever they're created for is made easy for them. So, أما أهل السعادة فييسرون لعمل أهل السعادة. So, for example, the fortunate people, it's easy for them to do the actions of the people of fortune. وأما أهل الشقاوة فييسرون لعمل أهل الشقاوة. And as for the unfortunate or misfortunate people, the people or the actions of the misfortunate people, that's made easy for them. So yes, meaning that you must continue to do good, or you must continue, right? This concept of free will, right? That we have this free will, we have the ability to do what's right and what's wrong. This is one of the tests of Allah Ta'ala, you can say, right? That Allah Ta'ala gave us free will. Now, if a person chooses to do right, then they'll be rewarded. If a person chooses to do wrong, then they'll be punished, right? And this free will comes with other clauses or other repercussions, you can say, right? So people, they say, you know what, why does God allow for all this destruction and killing and all of that? We say, listen, that's a byproduct of free will. Right? That's a byproduct of free will. This destruction, murder, stealing, all of this is a byproduct of free will. Because Allah gave us free will, you have people who will select the good path, like all of you, mashallah, and there will be other people who will select the wrong path, and inshallah all of you will be rewarded, and all of the people who do haram, they'll be punished, right? So essentially, the world and all of us, right? We are created, we were given free will, and those of us who do good will be rewarded. Those of us who don't do good, then will be punished, right? As opposed to, for example, the angels. The angels don't have free will. The angels, they must do good. They cannot do wrong, right? The angels cannot do anything wrong. They can only obey Allah Ta'ala. So therefore, there's no Jannah or Jahannam for the angels. Why? Because they don't have free will. Whereas we have free will, and so therefore Allah has created Jannah and Jahannam for us. Those who choose good, you have Jannah. Those who choose evil, you go to Jahannam. This predestination, right? Now, if a person is, Umar himself also mentioned, I've mentioned this as well many times, that you must work, right? Umar, once he saw this person, just sitting at home, right? And he just, he asked him, why are you staying? Why are you not working? He said, you know what? It's already taqdeer. Taqdeer is already written, right? So Umar, he said, listen, the sky does not rain gold and silver. You must go and work. Right? I mean, the sky does not rain gold and silver. You must work. So that's the reality. That while we are in this world, you must do actions. And the end result, you and I have no knowledge of. Of course, Allah Ta'ala knows, right? My teacher, he would say that, listen, the way it makes sense is that Allah Ta'ala knows everything. Allah knows past, present, and future. Right? So, how would it be that, how can we worship a God that does not know past, present, and future? You cannot. How can you worship a God that doesn't know past, present, and future? Our Allah knows everything. And that's why He is deserving of being worshipped. Right? If someone is claiming to be God, but they don't know the past, they don't know the present, they don't know the future, then how can they be called God? Right? So for example, you have these other gods, right? Other religions, for example. You see what happens, right? Some of the gods, they're fighting with other gods, they're being crucified, this is happening, that's happening. How does that make sense? How can God not know what's going to happen in the future? That does not make sense. Because God is the creator of time. Allah is the creator of time. And so how can it be that Allah is not aware of the past, present, and future? Does that make sense? Past, present, and future is all irrelevant to Allah Ta'ala. It's all the same. To us, that doesn't make sense. Why? Because to us, everything has a past, present, and future. You and I, we have a past, present, and future. The phone has a past, present, and future. The sky has a past, present, and future. Everything has a past, present, and future. Allah Ta'ala does not. Allah is the creator of time and space. As I mentioned in Jum'ah today as well, Allah is the creator of time and space, and so therefore, Allah is not bound by time or space. Okay? So, you must continue doing things, and you must not be despondent, nor is it allowed for you to live your life thinking that you're a Jannati. Right? Because a person can live their entire life doing good deeds, but then at the end, they can ruin themselves. If I'm not mistaken, it was Imam Malik, if I'm not mistaken, it was Imam Malik who, at the end of his life, I think it was his son or one of his relatives or one of his students came to him and said, now you, or he saw Imam Malik saying, not yet, not yet. Is it Imam Malik or Imam Ahmed? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So, anyways, whoever it is, right? One of the great scholars of the past. He, at the time of his death, he was saying, not yet, not yet. So one of his relatives said, what's going on? And he said, Shaitan came. And Shaitan said, I think it was Imam Ahmad or Imam Malik, one of the two Imams, Imam Ahmad or Imam Malik. So he said, you have been successful, you have been saved from me. That scholar said, no, not yet, not yet. Meaning until the last breath comes out, we cannot say that we are definitely successful. In the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, right? One second, I have to find this hadith first. I skipped over a number of pages. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he speaks about the people. Yes, so for example, there's a hadith, right? Sahal ibn Sa'ad radiallahu anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, it's mentioned that in one hadith, right, that in one of the battles, right, one of the battles, there was one Sahabi or one person, this one person, he was on the battlefield and he was everywhere. The Sahaba, they're saying that, listen, none of us have done as much as this person has done. He's everywhere. And he's defeating all of the polytheists, all of the mushrikeen, he's killing all of them. And he's winning at every single stage. He's defeating the groups, he's defeating the small individuals. And so definitely he's from the people of Jannah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hears about this. And he says, he is from the people of Jahannam. Sahaba, they're like shocked. They're saying, look, but you and I, we don't really understand it, right? Because we've never like participated in war, right? Like modern warfare is different from previous warfare. Imagine you have like, let's say, two groups of people, and you see one person like seriously saving everybody's life, right? All the Muslims' lives, and he's just killing all of the non-Muslims, right? And now, subhanallah, he is, all the Sahaba, they believe that this person is Jannati, right? And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, no, he's a Jahannami. Now, one of the Sahaba, he's like shocked. So he says, I'm going to go follow him. So he goes and he follows him. And what happens is, that person, he's fighting, and then he gets severely wounded somehow. Right? And, he's fighting somebody and he gets severely wounded. What he does is, it's mentioned in the hadith, he puts the hilt of the sword on the ground and he commits suicide, essentially, right? He hastens his death. He doesn't allow himself to regularly die, he kills himself. Right? And basically, suicide is haram, and if someone commits suicide, then they'll be in Jahannam, right? And so, although maybe not permanent Jahannam, but definitely for some extended period of time, right? And so then this Sahabi came back to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. I bear witness that you are definitely the messenger of Allah. And then he explains the entire situation. Nabi Sallallahu didn't see this. He was telling him of the future. So Rasulullah Sallallahu, he says that there are people who they do the actions of the people of Jannah, and in front of the people they think that this person is Jannati, whereas in reality this person is amongst the people of Jahannam. On the other hand, there are people that in the eyes of the people they're considered a Jahannami, but in the eyes of Allah Ta'ala this person is a Jannati. So this is the second point, which is that you and I, we have no idea. Or the third point rather. The third point, that you and I, we have no idea. We don't know how we will die. I'm sitting here on this member today. You all look at me, maybe you think I'm going to be in the highest level of Jannah. But there's no guarantee of that. That's a fact. I have no guarantee for myself. None of us have guarantees for ourselves. Not a single one of us have guarantees for ourselves that we will be the people of Jannah. Right? Because we have a long beard, we have a hijab, because we dress modestly. There's no guarantee. Right? I have no guarantee, you have no guarantee of being the people of Jannah. You're sitting here in a very blessed place right now, and of course you're doing all the things of the people of Jannah. But there's no guarantee. So that means that you must keep working and you must keep trying until your last moment. As Allah Ta'ala says, وَعَبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيكَ الْيَقِينَ. That you worship your Rabb until death comes, until yaqeen comes. What's yaqeen? Death. Death is yaqeen. Death is for sure. For everybody. No matter how many trillions of dollars you have, you'll still be, death will still come to you. As Allah Ta'ala says, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul shall taste death. So very important that we understand this reality, that Allah Ta'ala, there's no guarantee for any one of us. We live our entire lives doing good things, but at the last moment we make a mistake. and we can be destroyed. On the other hand, you live your entire life as a person of Jahannam, and the last moment you do some good deeds, and Allah saves you. For example, as you know, the famous hadith of the prostitute, the Zania, who gave the dog some water, and because of that one good deed, Allah Ta'ala saved her, and Allah Ta'ala gave her Jannah, right? So it could be one good deed, and because of that one good deed, Allah will save you. Right? On the other hand, it could be one sin, right? And that's why I'll conclude here, inshallah. That's why when you go to visit a person and they're on their maradul maut, they're on their last moments, you should not tell them, say La ilaha illallah. Don't say that. You should do talqeen. That's very, by the way, I'm hearing a lot of noise from the sister side, by the way. You guys having a separate band there or something? I'm not sure. The entire, mashallah, they've been talking a lot. A lot of separate Q&A there, mashallah. Anyway, so, alhamdulillah, it's okay. This is unfortunately common. Very unfortunate. But sisters, come on, please. This is, you can ask your questions later, sisters. Anyways, so, just wrapping up, what was I saying, right? The deathbed, right? You should do talqeen. Talqeen is what? Talqeen is encouraging someone to say the kalima. Now, how do you encourage somebody? The scholars, they say that you should not say La ilaha illallah, right? When you come to do talqeen, don't tell the person on their deathbed, say La ilaha illallah. Why? Because you have no idea what they're going through. They're probably going through the worst traps of shaitan at that moment. Shaitan at that moment is trying everything that shaitan can do. Understand? Shaitan is, it's possible. Shaitan, it's mentioned also that shaitan brings the deceased loved ones, the mother, the father, the loved ones who have passed away. Shaitan brings them, and he comes in their shape. And he says, listen, this Jannah, Jahannam, this is wrong. Accept this, accept that. And so this person is probably going through the worst trials at that moment when they're on their deathbed. So at that moment, don't tell them, say La ilaha illallah, because it's possible they may say no. They may think, they may be hallucinating, whatever may happen, they may say no. And if they refuse outright the kalima, then that's very dangerous. Instead, talqeen is what? Talqeen is everybody around should say La ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. But they should not tell the person, say La ilaha illallah. Rather, everybody around encourages them indirectly to say La ilaha illallah. Because of the famous hadith, Rasulullah says that the person whose last statement is La ilaha illallah, they will enter Jannah, inshallah. That's a good sign of them entering Jannah. So very important that we do talqeen in the proper manner. Don't tell them to say La ilaha illallah, but rather you encourage them. Lastly, what should you do, right, to have a good death? Always make dua to Allah Ta'ala. Number one, main thing, make lots of dua to Allah Ta'ala for a good death. That you pass away in the state of Iman when Allah Ta'ala is happy with you. Make this dua all the time. All of us should be making this dua. Like there are many duas, which I'll mention some of them, but it's very important that we maintain these du'as. For example, there's another dua, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. That, oh Allah, don't mislead our hearts after you have guided it, right? And then that رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً. Oh Allah, grant us rahmah or mercy from your side. إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. You are the giver of gifts, right? That's one very powerful, very important dua that you should read. Another is Allahumma ahsin aqibatana fi al-umuri kulliha. That, oh Allah, grant us a good ending in all of our affairs, right? وَأَجِرْنَا مِنْ خِزْيِ الدُّنْيَا وَعَذَابِ الْآخِرَةِ. And save us, this is amazing, save us from being disgraced in the dunya and the punishment of the akhirah. Amazing dua. All of us should memorize these, at least one or two of these du'as. Maybe some of us know رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. Maybe we know this dua, but this one, اللهم أحسن عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة. All of us should memorize this dua, right? And some of these du'as we should try to recite because at the end of the day, as the hadith of Rasulullah says, I'll conclude on this. He says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ. That all actions are based on the ending. Inshallah, the entire life will be in the proper manner. But if you're wasted, so very important. We cannot. He's been drinking. He's been doing zina. His entire life is going to Jahannam. There's no guarantee. At the same time, one person you see, they're always in the masjid. They're always doing good things. You think this person is Jannati? There's no guarantee. Absolutely no guarantee that anybody will be a Jannati or Jahannami until the life leaves this world. And that's why Rasulullah SAW commands us that we should not look at people and judge them, rather. Based on the ahadith, we understand that Nabi SAW encourages us that we should not look at people and judge them, because we definitely have no clue, we have no idea if a person is actually from the people of Jannah or the people of Jahannam. And so therefore, we should be very careful about making assumptions. Okay? Inshallah. That being said, we'll conclude on this, inshallah. I will request everyone to say this dua at least once. That way, inshallah, we can at least say this dua one time, inshallah. So the dua is, I'll say it one more time to remind us. It's Allahumma ahsin lana fil umuri kulliha wa ajirna min khizyi dunya wa adhab al-akhirah. O Allah, grant us a good ending in all of our affairs and save us from the disgrace of this world and save us from the punishment of the akhirah. So I'll say it slowly, inshallah. We can all read it at least one time and then try to memorize it. If anybody wants the dua, just text me privately. I will send you a recording of the dua. That way you can memorize the dua, inshallah. Otherwise, you can record it now as well. That's fine as well. Whatever you want to do. But let's say it together, inshallah, one time now. So I'll start. Allahumma ahsin aqibatana fil umuri wa ajirna min khizyi dunya wa adhabil akhirah. May Allah Ta'ala grant us a good ending. May Allah Ta'ala grant us khatima bil khair. May Allah Ta'ala allow us to end our lives in the best of manners. May Allah Ta'ala take us when He is happy with us. May Allah grant us all long lives filled with khair, afiyah, comforts and ease. And may Allah Ta'ala only take us once our lives are complete in the best of manners. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. And also, it was Imam Ahmad. It was Imam Ahmad who said that. If you have any other questions, you can always text me or see me now, inshallah. But this is, alhamdulillah, good enough. We have dinner now, inshallah. Don't leave without having dinner, inshallah. The food will be delicious, inshallah. If it's not delicious, then don't come after me. I didn't order it. Sorry. Oh, by the way, there's a couple of very important announcements. Let me just quickly make those announcements. Quickly, just give me 1 minute, inshallah. I'll make the announcements, inshallah. The first announcement is that, inshallah, Ramadan is coming up. Within about 30 something days, we have